The Alabama Senate election campaign now in its final hours, with voters heading to the polls tomorrow. Democrat Doug Jones is holding multiple events around the state, while Republican Roy Moore has a rally scheduled tonight. Jonathan Seri is covering the race for us. Jonathan.
Hi, Dana. He's billing it as a Drain the Swamp rally. It's scheduled to take place in this barn that you see behind me here in southeast Alabama. Roy Moore will be joined on the stage by former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon, who rallied with Moore at another barn in the town of Fairhope back on Tuesday. And the campaign is sending out a robocall recorded by President Trump. Listen.
Get out and vote for Roy Moore. His vote is our Republican Senate, and it's needed. We need Roy to help us with the Republican Senate. We will win, and we will make America great again.
But a new Fox News poll shows Democrat Doug Jones polling 10 points ahead of Moore in a state that normally favors Republicans. Here's a sample of what's on the minds of Alabama voters.
I'm voting for Jones.
And I'll be voting for Judge Moore.
Truth be told, I haven't really decided yet. My granddad's going to write in about something because he's a Republican, but he don't like Roy Moore. But I'm still kind of tossed up.
Luther Strange was my choice, but I want to keep a Republican in the Senate.
And then as for the other campaign, a Doug Jones campaign officials confirms that former President Obama and former Vice President Joe Biden have also recorded robocalls, these robocalls on behalf of their candidate, Doug Jones. So it's entirely possible that if you're a voter in Alabama, you will hear dueling robocalls from the current and former President, Dana.
That is if they answer their phone at all. Jonathan, thanks so much. More on the Alabama Senate election and how independent voters could impact the race between Doug Jones and Roy Moore. Alabama Senate candidate Doug Jones with a big lead among independents one day before the special election. The poll shows Jones leading Republican Roy Moore 50 to 21% among unaffiliated voters. To help us break it all down, we bring in Fox News politics editor and the editor of Halftime Report, Chris Stirewalt. Wondering what surprised you, if anything, in this poll and why those undecideds matter in a state that is so Republican in its affiliation.
Well, they ain't lying when they say that they're undecided, but they maybe just can't come to terms with it, with what they're going to do. There are no really undecided voters, especially when you get to the end like this. Those people either are leaning one way or another, or they're not going to vote. And really what we're looking at a great deal with this election is what kind of turnout model are we talking about? If this was a typical turnout year, if for a off, double special, triple flutterblast election in Alabama, you would say that the turnout would be very low, because who would care? Because you know it's going to be the Republican because it was already settled in the primary, right? Well, this time, if it's different, it is going to be different. The question is, how much different? How much more turnout is there going to be? What does the real pool of voters look like? And in the poll that we found, you take all this interest, you take all those independent voters, and it adds up to a pretty, I won't say astonishing, but a robust margin for the Democrat.
Let me play for you some sound from Senator Shelby, the sitting senator, the senior senator of Alabama, who made I think, somewhat a bold and surprising move yesterday morning. Take a listen.
I couldn't vote for Roy Moore. I didn't vote for Roy Moore, but I wrote in a distinguished Republican name.
Do you believe these two Alabama women?
I think the women are believable. I have no reason not to believe them.
What did you make of that, Chris?
You know how they always talk about, oh, he's a real profile in courage? They mean it mockingly. That's actually what that looks like, because you do it when it comes when you do something hard. That means that you're doing it at risk to yourself and that a danger for your own future. And in the case of Shelby, this is a guy who doesn't want to have to tangle with Roy Moore forever. He doesn't want to have to deal with this guy. He doesn't want to have to deal with the about 30% of the voters in the state who are diehard Mooreheads. They are all the way in for Roy Moore, and now they're going to hate Richard Shelby. He's going to have to deal with all that, and he did it anyway. And that's what courage looks like.
I wanted to ask you about turnout. So the New York Times Daily podcast reported that Jones needs, I don't know if you agree with this, but they reported Jones needs at least 25% turnout for African-American voters in order to have a chance at winning. And yet I read some reporting this weekend that there might be some difficulty in getting African-American voters to turn out to vote. And yet, again, today you have Obama and Biden recording robocalls. Will that help Doug Jones with that particular vote?
Well, yeah, it will. All of this attention will help Doug Jones will help turnout in general. This being sort of the major political event in America this month. This has taken the center stage as a proxy war between the wings of the Republican Party, Republicans and Democrats, and all of this stuff. So all that attention will add to something. But now we'll see whether or not it was a wise idea for Barack Obama to record a robocall down there. I think, given the intense unpopularity of Obama, even with independents willing to vote for Jones or to stay home and let the election happen without them, inserting Obama into the race will not help Jones with those voters.
All right. Well, we'll see, and we'll see you up here in New York for the special election coverage. All right, Chris Stirewalt, thanks so much. The White House briefing expected to get underway shortly, and we'll take you there as soon as it starts. Plus, the House and Senate inching closer to a deal on tax reform. How the Treasury Department says tax cuts will pay for themselves.